Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time you're watching this video. It's me again. It's Teacher Kent. And today we are going to review about the separation techniques. Now, I know that we have already talked about this last week, but it's better to review it. And I also found out a small video that we can use in order for us to understand more what are separation techniques. So, are you ready? Let's start, shall we? Ways to Separate Mixtures by Mrs. Bright.
Thank you for joining me today as we discuss everything you need to know about mixtures, especially how to separate them. Are you ready? Here we go. Which method should you use? There are several ways to separate mixtures, and they're all based on the physical properties of that mixture. The physical properties will help determine which separation method is the best one to use. The first one we're going to talk about is sifting. Sifting involves using a sieve or sifter to separate solids that have varying sizes. So a mixture of rocks, gravel, and sand could be sifted to separate that mixture. Also, magnetic attraction, which is a separation of magnetic material from non-magnetic material. Magnetic material includes iron, steel, nickel, or cobalt. An example of this would be separating iron filings from sand. Now let's see what that looks like. So here the student is holding a magnet, and on the plate is a mixture of sand and iron filings. You can see that the magnet attracts the iron, thus separating the mixture.
Can you see this, class? Let me just show it to you more. This is a mixture right down here of sand and some iron fillings. If you use a big enough magnet, the iron will be absorbed by the magnet while leaving the soil and other parts downstairs. That is called magnetic separation.
Evaporation. Evaporation can be used to separate mixtures as well. It involves heating the solution until the liquids turn to gases and leave the solids behind.
Now, this one is not part of your book, but let's just still watch how we use evaporation to separate solids from liquids.
An example of this would be boiling a solution of water and salt until all that is left are the salt crystals. So here's an example of how you can get water that you can drink from salt water. So you take the salt water and you put it in the kettle, you boil the water, and it evaporates. As it evaporates, you catch it with that lid with ice cubes on the top and have it drip into another beaker.
Okay, now what they're doing is they're drinking water that is mixed with salt or salt water. You know, the ones from the ocean? As it turns out, class, if you boil water, it becomes liquid. It becomes gas, I'm sorry. And then that gas is pure water. Okay? It's pure water. There are no salts there. So what they're doing here is they are putting ice cubes on top of a pail or a pan, and that makes the pan cold. And when the hot air from boiling seawater goes up, it condenses or it becomes water again due to the cold temperature of the ice cubes. And then it will slowly drop down until you can drink the salty water. Now, that's a way to separate salt from water or water from salt, especially in salty waters.
This separates the salt, which will be left in the kettle, from the water that is now in the beaker. Filtration. Filtration removes solids from liquids by using a filter. An example of this would be separating sand from water through filtration. Another example would be separating noodles from water using filtration. Let me show you what this looks like. Here is a diagram of sand within the water, and as you pour it through the filtration device, you can see that the sand comes out of the water and the salt water is left behind.
Okay, now filtration is when we filter out some things. We don't need to um, boil it anymore, but we need what we call a strainer. If we mix sand and salt with water, they will not be dissolved. You filter the sand and the water together, and then you will just get the salt water downstairs, just like the ones in the video or in the description.
And then the other example was noodles and water. So when you're cooking spaghetti noodles and they are done, you want to take them away from the water. And so you can use a filtration device to separate the water from the noodles. So what are those methods again? Okay, let's do a little review. The first one is sifting. Sifting is used to separate solid materials. Magnetic attraction. Magnetic attraction can be used to separate material that is magnetic from material that is not. Evaporation. Evaporation can separate solids and liquids, like water and salt. And filtration. Filtration can be used to separate liquids and solids using a filter.
Okay, so that is it for today. No, that's it for the video, I mean. In the video, we only got 1, 2, 3, 4. We only have 4 ways to separate mixtures. In our book, there's lots more. But let's review this again so that you understand, okay? Sifting is used to separate solid materials. It's how you used to get gold. By the way, we are going to watch this Friday on how people used to get gold without the big machines to help separate gold from soil. So be excited for that. Next, magnetic attraction. Some solids are attracted to magnets. If you put a magnet on top of it, the metal parts will go to the magnet. It's called magnetic attraction. Next, we have what we call evaporation. You can separate solids and liquids from evaporation. Using evaporation, I mean. You heat up the liquid. A liquid, there will come a point in time that if the temperature is very hot or hot enough, it will evaporate the water. And what's left will be the solids. The solids, they will not evaporate. Most of them will probably burn, but they will not evaporate on high temperatures. And finally, we have filtration. Filtration is when we filter out. We use something to catch all the solids so that the liquids can pass through. Do you understand? And I hope you do, because we're gonna be studying about the next one. Are you ready? Let's start, shall we? Let me just show this picture. So I did not make it big. Wait for a moment, class. I'm just gonna make it big. Okay, let's review, okay? Separation techniques. But before we talk about separation techniques, we're gonna have to talk about this. What are these things? These are what we call mixtures, okay? These are what we call mixtures. It's from the word mix. You mix two different substances or more together. Like the one in the left are the peanuts, the different types of nuts. The one in the middle is the ground, the rocks, and the pebbles. And the one on the right is water and oil. So, the first separation technique that we talked about is the use of your hands and fingers. We call this picking, and that is how you separate the peanuts that you would like to eat and the peanuts that you don't like to eat because they're not as good or they're not as healthy. Next, you can also use your fingers again to get the rocks that you think are pretty, or you can get the shells that are part of the rocks there in the ground, especially those near the ocean. You use your fingers and your hands. Finally, we have what we call two liquids together. Now, our hands can do a lot of amazing things. They help us every day. But our hands, we cannot really hold liquid. Liquid is too slippery. It will not take it will take some shape of our hands, but there's still some space here that no matter what we try, the water will still, the liquid will still fall off. So we need to find another way to separate them. So the way that we found to separate them is simply putting them, mixing them, and then when you mix those, you wait for a few minutes, then it will separate. The top one will be oil and the bottom will be water because water is much more dense or heavier than oil. So you can just open the bottom part of it and you can get the water. And then you can also get the oil after you finish getting all of the water. That's how you separate it. You can't use your hands or fingers anymore. Do you still remember that one? Good. How about this one? Sifting, a technique used to separate solids by different sizes. It is what we call a sieve, that one right there. Some sieves have different size holes for different particles of the mixture. And we used this before to get gold. Sifting, it separates two solids. But the solids in this case are the ones that we can't use our fingers for. If we can separate it using our fingers, we use our fingers. But if we can't, we can use the sieve or we can use sifting. In this example, I already told you a cook or a baker is trying to make a very big cake. But in order to make a cake, you need flour. And sometimes the flour has solid pieces that are bigger than other pieces. And because it's still bigger and solid, you can try and pick it, but some of them are too small for you to pick. So you use a sieve. You put the flour and then you shake it and then you touch the tap or you tap the side and voila, the smaller parts go down, the heavier parts stay at the top. And that is called sifting. Do you understand, class? We don't worry, like I said, we're gonna watch a video about how you get gold before, how people used to get gold. Now, what are other separation techniques aside from sifting? We can also use the one that is shown in the video, separation by magnets. Because like what I told you before, um, some solids are attracted or can be picked up by magnets. Now, when are we going to use this? If you look at the picture, what do you think that picture is? That picture is in a garbage or landfill. People usually pass a big electromagnet. An electromagnet is a magnet that uses electricity. And if a magnet uses electricity, it becomes very, very, very strong. So, what do people do with it? They pass through thousands or hundreds of garbage. And those that have metal will stick to the magnet. And why do we need to do that? Why do we need to get the metal? So that we can recycle it. Do you remember what is recycling? Recycling is when you change one thing to form to another. using the old thing. So, using the old metals, we can make new metals. Okay? We can make new metals using the old metals. That's why we need to separate by magnets. And not to mention, some objects like your cars, you cannot use your hands to pick it. That's too big. You can use an electromagnet so that it will poop, carry up the car, and then you can use it to recycle the car, even without us humans carrying it because it's very, very heavy. That is separation by magnets. In the two examples I showed you, it's how to separate solids from another solids. We're gonna finish the chapter next week by how to separate solid from liquid and even liquid from liquid. Sadly, it's hard to separate gas from gas. It's not in your book, so we don't need to tackle it. In your book, it's just how to separate solids from other solids and solids from liquids or liquid from solids. Did you remember all the things that I taught you last week? Because this is just a review. We are merely reviewing what we talked about last week. I hope you did, class. And don't worry if there are some things you don't understand. We will talk about it next time. Okay? Goodbye, class. I will see you on Friday.